Thank you, Mr. Ross. I got the thumbs up, which means we're able to go. So welcome everyone to our special council meeting for Wednesday, March the 20th, 2024, the first full day of spring, or as I will be calling it from now on, sprinter. I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is live streamed and shall form part of the public record, and public comments we made in the meeting are audio and video recorded. We have people joining us on live stream tonight. Welcome to those people on live stream. And we will retain the records in accordance with the town's retention bylaw, and for more information about the collection, please contact the clerk's office. I want to acknowledge we had regrets from Councillor Drodge, who's away this week, and Councillor Waters is joining us virtually, so welcome, Councillor Waters. I'll now ask if the Deputy Mayor will please give the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Your Worship. The town of Innisfil acknowledges that Innisfil is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. The town also acknowledges that this land is the traditional territories of the First Peoples of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe people of Beausoleil First Nation, Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation, and we thank them for generations of stewardship. This meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people, and as settlers, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The town acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have one planning application is being brought forward this evening for information and public consultation purposes only, with no decisions being made tonight. I would now ask if I could have a mover and a seconder, please, to approve the agenda that was circulated and printed ahead of time. Councillor Constantine, Councillor Zanella, all those in favor? That is carried. Are there any pecuniary interests, conflicts of interest on this item tonight? Seeing none, we'll move forward. The application being brought forward tonight concerns a proposed amendment and a Class 1 permit to the community planning permit system, Our Shores bylaw number 062-17 for 740 Bayview Avenue in the town of Innisfil. We will start with presentations from staff and the consultant on behalf of the applicant. Council may have a few questions or comments, and then we'll have opportunity for public consultation where we hear from members of the public. We'd like to ask speakers if they would reserve their comments to 5 minutes, and if they still have more things that they would like to say after that, if you could please come up for another 5 minutes after everyone has spoken, although unless there's a whole bunch of people online tonight, I really don't think that's going to be a problem. Should any member of the public watching the live stream wish to make a comment, they can email Clerk's Services, and these comments will be provided to council and town staff and taken into consideration before council makes a final decision. You may also be added to the circulation list as an interested party, where you'll be kept updated on any future information regarding this item. The email will be listed on the PowerPoint during the meeting and is also available on tonight's agenda that can be found on the town's website. We'll now hear from Deputy Clerk Kevin Jacob on how the public notice of this meeting was provided.
Thank you, Your Worship. In accordance with the Community Planning Permit System bylaw, notice for this public meeting was provided by the placement of signs on the street and lake frontages of the property on February 28, 2024. As well, information and materials respecting this application have also been posted on the town's Get Involved page.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Has any correspondence been received by Clerk Services concerning this item?
Yes, Your Worship. 2 pieces of correspondence have been received by the Clerk's office. The first is from Stephen Bloom, dated March 20th, 2024, providing comments on the application, including environmental considerations and drainage. The second is from Mr. Ian Twayman, dated March 19th, 2024, providing comments in support of the application. As well, your worship, members of the public may provide comment or register their interest regarding this item during the meeting or up until council makes a decision by contacting the clerk's office.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. And I just wanted to let council know that that second piece of correspondence just came in around 5:45 tonight, so just to make sure you've had a moment to check that in your email. We'll now hear from Kirsten Morris, Senior Planner, who will provide a high-level summary of the application. Ms. Morris, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the public. Tonight, this public meeting is to consider a proposed community planning permit system or CPPS bylaw amendment and a Class 1 planning permit for lands known as 740 Bayview Avenue. Next slide, please. The purpose of the application is to legalize an on-land boat port that was constructed without a building permit on top of an existing concrete half walls. The applicant is seeking a Class 1 planning permit to allow an on-land boat port under Section 5.2.2 of the town's CPPS bylaw, and also a CPPS bylaw amendment to permit the reduced side yard setbacks of the boat port to the western interior side lot line. Next slide, please. So the subject lands are located outside of the settlement area of Alcona and have a lot area of approximately 913 meters squared, with a lot frontage of approximately 15.4 meters on Bayview Avenue, which is a private road. The lands are occupied by an existing single detached dwelling and detached garage and are located on the shoreline of Lake Simcoe. Surrounding land uses are generally residential in nature. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the site plan, which shows the location of the boat port on the subject lands and the setbacks to the west interior side lot line, which are 0.2 meters or 0.20 meters at the southwest corner of the structure, 0.11 meters at the center of the structure, and 0.02 meters at the northwest corner of the structure. And those setbacks shown are inclusive of the eaves that were installed on the roof of the structure. Next slide, please. So this slide is just another view of the setbacks to the west interior side lot line from the center of the structure. Next slide, please. So the application was supported by a number of supporting documents, including the draft CPPS bylaw amendment, a lot survey, a site plan, the cross-section and elevation that we just saw, a planning justification report, a lot grading plan, a lot grading certificate, an Ontario Building Code opinion letter, snow guard schematic, a Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry confirmation email that no work permit was required, and photos of the eaves maintenance. Next slide, please. So the applications will be evaluated by staff in accordance with the criteria for considering variations contained in Section 1.9 of the CPPS bylaw, and a future technical recommendation report will be brought forth to council at a later date, which will also consider all comments received as part of the public process. Key considerations outlined in Section 1.9 and 2.14 of the CPPS bylaw include if the proposal is appropriate for the lands, if the proposal takes into account the unique characteristics of the property, if potential off-site impacts are identified and mitigated, if the proposal maintains the general intent of the shoreline bylaw, if the proposal maintains the general intent of the official plan, and if the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, and also confirming that a public engagement session took place for the CPPS bylaw amendment. Staff will also evaluate additional considerations as they relate to the application, including grading and drainage impacts, structure maintenance requirements, and compliancy with the Ontario Building Code. Next slide, please. So the building department submitted comments, which are summarized on this slide. They requested that their comments are addressed before issuance of the shoreline permit, and they're asking that the applicant confirm ownership of the unopened road allowance and that no Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry permit is required for a permanent structure. They've also asked the applicant to provide a legal survey showing all relevant setbacks and dimensions to the property line, provide a cross-section at the north and south section of the structure to confirm setbacks. Also, that the applicant update the lot grading plan to show the boat port does not adversely affect drainage on the neighboring property to the west, and to also update the Ontario Building Code compliance letter regarding the structure crossing property lines to the ministry-owned property. And then also, we received 2 public comments that the deputy clerk has summarized, as well as LSRCA confirmation that they have no concerns with the application and that a minor permit will be required from their office. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a summary of the proposed Class 1 permit and bylaw amendment. So the Class 1 permit is to allow an on-land boat port that is 3.45 meters in height, 9.15 meters in length, and 4.87 meters in width, which are all within the standard provisions that can be considered by council under a Class 1 permit within the CPPS bylaw. And then the proposed side yard setbacks proposed through the amendment are shown on the bottom table, which exceed the standard 5-meter setback requirement and the 4.5-meter setback that can be considered by council under a Class 1. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, staff will review and consider all comments received and will report back to council with a recommendation at a future council meeting. Notice of the application returning to council will be provided to all who request notification and submitted written comments. If the Class 1 permit and bylaw amendment is approved by council, a building permit will be required to be obtained following the issuance of the shoreline permit. Next slide. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Morris. We'll now hear from Corey Chisholm, partner, MHBC Planning, on behalf of the applicant, who will provide further planning context to the application. Welcome, Mr. Chisholm, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, members of council, town staff, and members of the public. My name's Corey Chisholm. I'm a partner with MHBC Planning out of our Barrie office. I'm here before you this evening on behalf of our client, the Stacklick family, the owners of the subject property. Before I get started, I would like to thank town staff on the efforts to date on the application. It has been a collaborative process over the last few months. We have worked through the pre-consultation process, a first formal submission, and we've had a number of working meetings as we continue to provide materials in support of the proposed application. I'll try not to repeat too much of Ms. Morris's presentation. I do have a presentation that's rather lengthy, however, it is primarily photographs, just showing context of the site and the surrounding area. So as mentioned, the location of the subject property is 740 Bayview Avenue, which you can see here on the aerial. So just a brief history of the subject property. The Stacklick family did acquire the subject property in May of 2020. The client since redeveloped the property, both the existing single detached dwelling as well as the detached garage, with full approvals and permits, which included the shoreline approvals as well as the building permits. Through that process, they also elected to remove another existing structure which they inherited when they acquired the property, which was actually encroaching on the property adjacent on the west side, 744 Bayview Avenue. I do have some photographs of that, which I'll take you to shortly. And since acquiring the property, in addition to the redevelopment, they've also made a number of landscaping improvements. It was noted the structure in question this evening, which is the roof over the existing concrete foundation, was erected without a building permit. There was a misunderstanding at that time. So since it was identified, our client has taken a lot of effort to rectify the situation, which is why we're here before you this evening. And I'll take you through the justification for the proposed amendments, which would essentially legalize it from a planning perspective. So just some before and after images of the property back when they acquired it and the redevelopment that has occurred since. So you can see on the left-hand side, there was a smaller existing single detached dwelling. They've since redeveloped it with the new single detached dwelling you can see on the right-hand side. These are images of, there was an existing detached garage on the road side of the property, and that has also since been redeveloped with the image you can see on the right, which also shows the public notice sign that was required to be erected for this application. So this is a view before and after looking from the dwellings, looking towards Lake Simcoe. In the image on the left, you can actually see a smaller white shed type structure. And then just beyond that, you can see where this existing concrete foundation was located. On the image on the right, you can see that shed has been removed. That was encroaching over the property line with the adjacent property. And the proposed development that we're here this evening is really the roof and the aluminum poles that are holding that metal roof above that existing concrete foundation. You can also see in this image some of the landscaping improvements that have taken place since our client acquired the property. This is a similar view as the one before. Again, you can see that shed, which is no longer there on the left-hand side, and the fencing and landscaping that has been installed since our client acquired the property. So as Ms. Morris mentioned, we did go through the formal pre-consultation process with town staff where they identify all the materials that are required to form a complete application. Our client has spent a lot of time and money going through the process and hired both MHBC Planning as well as a number of other consultants, as you can see on this list, to complete the various engineering, surveying, building code related materials. It was also mentioned in the earlier presentation that one item that was asked for from the town was confirmation from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry that the structure is okay to be located within that unopened shore road allowance, and that we have since obtained that confirmation. There was actually an additional clarification that was sought, so we have since gone back and did recently receive a response on that, again confirming that they're okay with the structure. And when we come to some of the aerials, I think you'll see this unopened shore road allowance does go along many of the properties to the west and east, and there's many similar type structures that are located in that road allowance. So the purpose of the CPP bylaw amendment is to essentially permit the roof over the existing concrete foundation. And in order to do so, we need some relief from the standard provisions. So there's reductions to the interior side yard setback to that western property line. And there's also a slight increase to the maximum permitted lot coverage for detached accessory structures. And we'll go through that in a bit more detail. So just some additional photos of that, the current existing boat port, which we can see here. And these are some images kind of zoomed in showing the existing concrete foundation. So that has been there for a significant period of time. From the images you can see on the water side, it's more exposed and it's higher. It's probably about 3 feet from the concrete there as in the top left image. And then as it comes back into the property, it's recessed into the ground. On the image on the right, you can see again that existing foundation and how the poles of the structure have been secured to it. So this is a zoom out of the surveyed site plan. Again, you can see the existing structure and the detached garage in the middle and the bottom, and then the proposed boat port is in the top left corner. Just zooming in on this image directly on the boat port, we can see here we've specified 3 separate interior side yard setbacks just because the existing foundation is not parallel with the side lot line. So it does get closer to that lot line as we get closer to the water. So we have identified, and since the original site plan that was submitted, our client did get an updated survey done, which captures the setback to the gutter that has been installed on the eaves. And the proposed amendment is to have a relief that's measured to that gutter, which is the closest point of the structure. So we see in the bottom left corner, it's 17 centimeter setback. Then in the middle, which is the actual corner of the property before we get into the unopened shore road allowance, we're at 11 centimeters. And then while we're technically not on the property anymore, we're in the unopened road allowance. The way the CPP bylaw works is you essentially pretend that side lot line is extended. So we project that at the same angle. And when we do that, the gutter is right at a 0 meter setback in that northwest corner. So as mentioned, the property is captured under the community planning permit system as far as zoning is related. And here identifies the specific requests being requested. So we have those 3 dimensions identified. We also would include a clarification that these setbacks are inclusive of both the eaves and the gutter. Typically, a setbacks to the building, and there's some provisions for eaves and gutters to extend into it. In this case, since we're so close to that lot line, we want to make sure that that setback's specific to the closest point of the roof structure. We also note here the existing maximum lot coverage for detached accessory buildings is 10%. The way it's calculated is a bit unique. We have to include the whole structure, but we can't include the area of the unopened shore road allowance. So in ways, it sort of artificially deflates the lot area versus what's actually out there today. However, when we do that calculation, we are at 10.8% and have included it in the application. So as Ms. Morris went through, there are some other requirements under the CPP bylaw. There's a maximum length for on-land boat ports, a maximum width, and a maximum height, and the proposed structure does comply with all of those provisions. So it is smaller than what a maximum size structure of this type would be allowed. So just when we look at this from a planning perspective, we do look at the site context and in the context of the area. Not unlike many shoreline areas around Lake Simcoe and other lakes, the lot fabric is traditionally kind of long, narrow lots going down to the water. So we do end up with rather skinny lots. And when we do apply kind of modern zoning standards to those, sometimes they don't necessarily align. So in this case, the lot width is 15 meters. The required setback's 5 meters. When we take that from either side of the lot, you're not left with much area to locate a detached accessory structure. And also historically, which you can see throughout the area, many of these kind of boat port type structures tend to be located close to one side of the property down by the shore as opposed to centered on the property. And we do have some photographs kind of showing some of the properties in the area. I think this is just zooming in a little bit more to our client site and the properties to the west and east. And if you go along the shoreline, you can see there are a number of existing similar type structures that tend to be located skewed to one side of the properties. So these are some additional shots. Again, this is taken from the Lake Simcoe side. So in this image, on the left, you can see the proposed structure. You can see our client's boat in there and their marine railway into the lake. The property to the right is the neighboring property. They have an existing accessory structure on the left side, also in close proximity, and a similar unenclosed boat port on the far side of their property, as well as a large dock structure. These are some examples of other properties in close proximity to the site, both to the west and east. And again, just showing kind of the character of the area. The lots are generally narrow, and there's many of similar type structures, and typically located to one side of the property. Some common concerns when we look at applications like this, especially along the shoreline, could be impact to views. The proposed structure is below the maximum height that is permitted, and it is an unenclosed structure, so it does really mitigate any sort of impact to the lake. Another concern with buildings that are located in close proximity to side lot lines is drainage, and ensuring that no drainage is inadvertently going onto a neighboring property. This was actually a concern that was brought to our client's attention earlier in this process, and they moved ahead and installed the gutter, which you can see on the image on the left. as well as some coverings to just help ensure that that doesn't get clogged up in the fall. Another concern we have heard from the building department since we submitted the application was to do with snow coming off the roof, since it is a metal roof. So our client is proposing a snow guard to be installed on the roof should the proposed application be approved. And the image on the right is an example of a snow guard being installed on a metal roof and how that works to prevent snow from sliding off the roof. So that concludes my presentation. I think overall, when I evaluate the proposed application, that concrete foundation is there, so that impervious area has been there for a long time. It's likely that a roof structure did occur at some point in the past. The proposed size of it is in well keeping with the standards in the town's bylaw. It's under the maximum height, under the maximum width, and under the maximum length. And really, if the roof is not allowed to proceed, our client would still be storing their boat there and would likely be forced to cover it with a tarp or something like that. I think a roof that's in keeping with the character of the area is much more desirable for the aesthetics and for keeping that existing character in the shoreline area. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions members of council or the public may have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chisholm. Are there any questions from council? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Everything looks to be in order. The one question I do have, though, is in regards to the snow guards. The picture you showed shows a light dusting of snow as it rests and, the small amount that would fall. For the winters we have here, I don't know if that would be sufficient. Now, if something were to occur with the proposal that's put forward and the town approves of it, who is held liable in this scenario? Because when we have them, you're talking about a waterfront property, the structure's within range, and we're talking literally between 7 inches down to 1/8 of an inch onto the property line where the snow is going to pile up and then eventually cascade. So how far is the owner of the property willing to put into this to make sure that there's no issues with the other adjoining property?
Mr. Chisholm?
And thank you for the comment or the question. So the proposed snow guard, there is some additional kind of backup that we can certainly take back and some information we can submit to the town demonstrating the success of those on previous roofs. I'm certainly not an expert in them. I think the intent is that it holds the snow back from a big shift off, and then as the snow melts, that it kind of depletes over time and holds that back from running off. My understanding, and town staff may be able to speak to this better than I can, is if there is future matters, drainage, snow, it does become a bit of a civil matter between the two properties. It's the same if someone builds a fence that's not on the correct side of the property line. I think our client has put a lot of work into doing everything they can that's possible to mitigate drainage and snow having impacts on that adjacent property, and certainly we can look to provide additional information to town staff as we continue to work through the process.
Thank you. Other questions from members of council? Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, Alex. Yeah. Councillor Waters, I wasn't looking on the screen. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My question is to staff. If this was a brand new structure that was going in, wouldn't we allow something with such minimal setbacks as we're seeing here? Because it didn't even meet the minimum standard. And I understand this is an existing foundation that was there, but I'm just asking, if we have standards, when do we adhere to them, or do we allow everyone to exceed the standards that we set? Thank you.
Ms. Morris?
Through the mayor to Council Waters, I think it would be dependent on the application and the specific factors that were submitted with the application. In this case, we are reviewing an amendment that has been proposed, and so we're not making a recommendation at this stage, but we are going to review it and come back with our technical review at a later stage. And I think that same review would apply to a different application or same process.
Councillor
you.
Waters, follow up?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Zanella.
Thank you, Your Worship. With regards to the environmental studies, besides the Ministry of Natural Resources, who else, was there anyone else that we had to receive stuff from that is okay or not okay?
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Zanella. For shoreline applications, we typically rely on the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority to review environmental considerations, and they have confirmed that they don't have any concerns with this application, but any additional requirements would be evaluated through their permitting process following the shoreline permitting process.
Thank you. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I guess there's a term that I wanted to get the planning equivalent to. When I see this type of a structure on a property, and we talk about setbacks and whatever, I think of the term grandfathered. Like, we don't know when this was built. We know the purpose of it. These people bought this property, and I'm sure this item on there was definitely, something that you would want, to keep your boat in a nice place close to the property. So what would be the planning equivalent to a grandfathered structure?
Ms. Morris?
Through the mayor to Councillor Ices. So yeah, the bylaw does have provisions to, we call them legal non-complying structures or non-conforming structures that legally exist prior to the bylaw passing. So that would be what we would consider grandfathered. And in order to confirm that something is grandfathered or legal non-conforming, we require certain evidence to be provided and reviewed by our legal team to confirm that.
Thank you. I knew there was a longer term for grandfather, so I'll try and remember that one.
Anyone else have questions or comments on this application? I had one, if I could, please. The letter that we received from 738 Bayview Avenue stating no concerns. Can you tell me, is that which side? Is that the side that abuts the structure, or is that the opposite side?
If I can add, it's the property on the east side.
The east side? Okay.
So the other piece of correspondence the town received is from the property owner on the west side.
On the west side. Okay, thank you. And the owner on the west side's comments and concerns would be addressed in the staff report coming forward?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else? Seeing none, can I ask Mr. Clerk, was there anyone who, I know there was nobody who had signed up ahead of time, but was there anyone who has corresponded with you since the meeting started?
Your Worship, no emails have been received.
Thank you. Is there any people in the audience who would like to make comment? Seeing none, I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comment? So I'd like to now go to the recommendation to receive the comments provided this evening. And can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Constantine. All those in favor? That is carried. Anyone who wishes to provide comment may still do so and may also register as an interested party to to be contacted before this item is considered by council, please contact clerk's office at innisfil.ca. And council thanks everyone for their participation, and will now go to the confirming bylaw and adjournment. So now we do those both at once, and I would like to ask for a mover and a seconder to pass the confirming bylaw and that we adjourn at 7:05 p.m. Moved by Councillor Richardson and Councillor Zanella. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone who is in attendance, and please be very, very careful on your ride home this evening.